Great.
Welcome back to the Shame-Free Zone. Wow, this topic is, for me, it feels a little bit edgy. We're going to be talking about men and horses, but probably it's also going to be about women and horses. I don't know. I've got a great guest with me today, and I want to read you just a little bit about her bio. Her practice is informed by the emotional mastery and leadership skills developed in a lifetime of working with horses. It incorporates the global interconnectedness and systems thinking of her training as an ecologist and is based on research backed techniques from conflict management, mediation, psychology, and high performance coaching. So we might get just a teeny tiny bit woo woo today, but I guarantee you it's going to be grounded in a lot of science. Please welcome Joan Brennan to the Shame-Free Zone. Hi, Joan.
Hello.
So I have to ask a question about your childhood, if that's okay with you. I'm a relationship coach, and I tend to do that. But how did you feel about horses when you were a little girl?
I was always crazy about horses.
You know,
my parents said that, like, pointing out the window of the car as a baby, horses, 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 always.
What do you think it is about horses and little girls? I mean, lots of little girls have dreams of unicorns. They want a pony for their birthday. What do you think that connection is about?
Well, I think there's a lot to it. Interestingly, horses also used to appeal more to little boys. When there were more horses around and the romance of the cowboy was more immediate.
Yeah.
I've talked to a number of people and kind of read about this. And then it's really transitioned more, specifically to girls in the past, I don't know, 60 years, maybe 50 years. And there's a lot about communing because, like, with horses, you can relate to them in a power over, like, I'm going to make you do this and we're going to achieve, or you can relate to them more in a power with dynamic where we kind of have an idea and we want to do something together. And that relational aspect with the added sort of physical and athletic prowess, I think, is very appealing.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I don't have your expertise. So I thought little girls were attracted to horses because they embody so much kind of masculine power, and there's a sensuality about them. And yeah, I don't know. I think though that also connects with what you were just talking about, that partnering with the horse, which is maybe a little more intuitive for girls and women.
Yeah, and horses have a very powerful heart field because their physical heart is very large and it emits a lot of electromagnetic power. Those heart contractions are electrical. So as the muscle expands and contracts, it has a big electromagnetic field. So that feeling the heart connection with a horse is very physical, sort of feel softer in your chest. And so if you're a more relational person, of either sex, but if you value that relational feeling, you'll feel it quite strongly when you're around horses.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
They represent totally. Actually, before you and I started this interview, I was telling you about this horse named Jamie, this huge Clydesdale horse who lives not far from my house, and how he's been teaching me about my energy fields, because he loves it when I'm in an expanded, heart-centered place. And I don't have to walk up to him. I can just drive by in the car and he can sense it. And I'll just kind of send some heart energy towards him, and he'll wake up from his little drowse and look at me. But if I am in this aggressive, more testosterone driven place, which I can get into pretty frequently, he ignores me.
Yeah.
He doesn't want anything to do with me. So there is something called horse whispering. And can you help us understand what that is? It does have any connection to your work at all?
Sure. So horse whispering is it's a pretty old sort of technique slash legend where certain really well-attuned people would be able to communicate with horses and sort of get the horses to do things they didn't want to do, maybe like go in a horse trailer, which they wouldn't like because it's a very small, dark box. It seems scary. Or like easily put a saddle on a horse and ride them around, through really tuning into the horse's own body language and how horses communicate with each other. And also, I think a huge component of it is that having your own energy aligned, where you're not in that predator mindset, like you need to do this or else. It's, I see you, I am assuming the role of a good leader, which means I'm very aware of your safety and I will keep you safe and respect your need for physical and emotional safety. And like sort of communicating that energetically and behaviorally to the horses. And then if you're in the old mindset of, put the rope on and make him do it, it looks like magic. And that consciousness has shifted a lot. And of course, in the old days, there were really, really good aligned horse people.
Yeah.
But when everybody has a horse and it's their transportation and it has to work, like your car has to work, I think there were a lot of people who were not self-selecting to be sort of consciously co-creating horse owners,
Yeah, I would imagine I mean, wow, if we want to go back in time, we've got all kinds of terrible abuses of human beings, let alone
Yes,
the
we do.
animals. Not that those are gone today, but we've tried
But
to.
it was really more a part of the economic system, those abuses of humans and the abuses of horses, just because those living beings were really important cogs in a machine.
Thank you for that distinction. Right. So we still have abuse, obviously, but it's not as entrenched in the economics, at least not in an overt way. I still
Right.
think
Yeah.
that
With the human trafficking, that horrible system still exists.
well, and the industrial prison complex, that's definitely a form of economic abuse too.
Absolutely.
But you use horses to help men. I want to hear more about that. Why specifically men, and why would a man come to you and ask you to help him with your horses?
That is a great question. So there is as we all know, there is a lot of sort of conflicting feelings and pressures around masculinity in our culture today. There's a lot of pressure not to be masculine. There's a lot of pressure to be uber masculine, and they almost are a little bit in some circles mutually exclusive. And I've met and worked with a lot of men who sort of grew up with this implied pressure that it's not actually okay to be really masculine or have your masculine feelings, and that they are in some way bad and you need to push them away. It's like, it's okay to be male, but that's a little bit second class, right? And it's sort of like the reverse of, like the inverse of patriarchy, but it's a facet of it, because when you're in a crushing system, it crushes everyone, not just the quote unquote subservient part of that system. But men in patriarchy, there's a lot of pressure to be a certain way and not to be these other ways.
Yes.
And so one of the things that kind of quashes down is a lot of access to the full emotional range of all of their thoughts and feelings and desires, and is it okay for me to feel these things and think these things, right? So it's like your inner wellspring of emotion and intuition can be a little bit externalized in the horse. Like it's a big, powerful force of nature. And so when men come and work with horses, it's not riding, but it's a lot of communing. And it's a lot of maybe leading the horse or around a particular space and noticing if the horse wants to follow you, if the horse doesn't want to follow you. Is it your natural inclination to pull on it or to make excuses or to take it personally and feel like you're doing something wrong? So you're able to externalize a lot of, or like sort of externalize your subconscious patterns and see them. And then see, wow, every time the horse, looks away from me, I take it really personally. I think I'm doing something wrong, or I must be boring, or he doesn't like me. When as you shared with that great example, the horse is just reading sort of the flavor of your heart feeling. Like, how do you feel to be around? And the really wonderful thing about horses is that as soon as you change the flavor of your heart feeling and just how you feel to be close to, then they change their response. So they don't hold it against you. If you came out and you were a little confused and afraid and self-conscious, and then trying to put a brave face on, they might just move away. And then as you get a little more comfortable and you think, oh gosh, it's all right to make mistakes or whatever, it's all right to feel the way I feel. Even if you feel scared, if you're okay with how you feel and congruent, then the horse, they'll come closer because they like to be around the feeling of congruence. So it's just that, and that's the first step of being really okay to be where you are and who you are at that moment.
I think that's what James has been teaching me is congruence. I appreciate you putting a word to that, because I've thought why at first I was just confused why sometimes he was open to me and sometimes he wasn't. I remember one time I made the mistake of getting out of the car to feed him a carrot, but I was on the phone and it wasn't a pleasant phone call. And a dog would have taken that carrot anyway. It's like maybe a little hesitant, like, why are you yelling at the person on the phone? But thanks for the carrot. But Jamie was like, I don't need your carrot.
Not worth it.
It's like, wow, you got a very high bar here, horse.
That's right. Yeah.
So I'm getting that men probably come to you because they're wanting to get in touch with their more intuitive side.
It can be more intuitive. I've often, intuitive, more emotional. Also just like in a very prosaic way, like they're running up against barriers in their life. Like marriage has fallen apart. We don't really know why. Or marriage has fallen apart and we actually are, they're starting to look back and think, why was I even in a relationship with that person? I realize now that wasn't really good for me. When I was in it, I thought it was good for me. Now I don't see that. I see that it was bad for me, but I don't know how to avoid it going forward. Because when we're cut off from certain emotions and certain thoughts, we can't get that good inner guidance from inside. And so we might wind up with partners that are bad for us, or we might wind up not being as nice to people as we think we're being. So it's just kind of clearing out, and it can be very practical, kind of clearing out life blocks and life patterns.
Like maybe even old traumas.
Oh yeah, definitely. And a lot of those early family patterning stuff that we can't see because they're too early. We don't see them in our parents because we're already conforming to certain aspects of that super early patterning. So when you work with the horse, it's a way to see some of those subconscious patterns actualized in the world. And then you can adjust them a little bit. And the great thing about horses is it's a nonverbal activity, right? And so you're not in your left brain. It's nice to have it's very important to have left brain insights. But when you can take it over into your right brain and kind of drop it into your limbic and emotional system, and that can change. Like you literally can have a feeling of rejection in your sort of from your mind and the story you're telling yourself. And then you can relax and take a deep breath. And then the horse comes over and you have the feeling of acceptance. So you feel the change in your body. And it really ties those intellectual insights with the heart change and the subconscious pattern changing all together in a very powerful way. It's pretty amazing.
Do you have any theories on why we care if the horse likes us?
Because if we don't care if our parents like us, we'll be kicked out of the cave and we'll starve to death. That's my theory. Is that
but
that's very powerful.
The human horse bond traverses many centuries. It would seem that at some point our survival depended on getting along with that horse.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you're right. They've been domesticated, about 6,000 years.
Yeah. Wow.
And for a long time, I mean, there's a saying that the road to civilization is paved with the bones of horses. You know, it's
Oh,
really, really integral to human development and human civilization growth. So
sure.
you're totally right.
I mean, until recently, they were still gauging cars by horsepower. So,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, so I would love to hear an anecdote about your own journey with horses. Like, how old were you when you first met a horse or owned a horse, or how many horses are in your life today? Just, and then also, what have horses taught you, Joan?
Ooh, that's a big question. Um,
I know it had like several different parts to it. So,
I love it. So as I mentioned, I was always horse crazy. And when I was 7 or 8, we finally moved to a place that was on 7 acres.
yeah.
So we were able to get a horse there because then we could keep it in the backyard and not have to board it. And it was, it was just easier and less expensive to keep your horse in your yard. So that was Mossy, and he was absolutely fantastic.
Oh,
Um, and we didn't have an arena. So when I went to ride, I would either ride around the yard or I would go out on the streets and then up into the local hills and just be out, a little. I got to do it by myself when I was 9, starting at 9. So 9-year-old out cruising around on my horse for hours
right.
with, no saddle, galloping through the hills. It was pretty idyllic. And
Wow.
because it was not in an arena, not with a trainer telling me, like, you have to walk now, you have to turn now, you have to make him do it, you have to show him who's boss. Like, the horse and I really were a team,
Oh,
and I didn't ride with a saddle, so I had to be very, very balanced. And it was wonderful. And so
oh,
that was my first horse. That's where I got really hooked.
wow.
Yeah. And then when I was 15, I left high school early. I graduated early and went to junior college. And then as soon as I got my driver's license, I was able to start an apprenticeship with a local trainer to learn how to teach and how to train horses. And she was wonderful. It's like, I'm very intellectual, and also very feeling, like, kinesthetically and emotionally. So
Right.
very thorough education of what is correct and how really to train the right way that's good for the horses. And also very kind and thorough with the people. So I got very lucky there. And then I kept going and working part-time with the horses or full-time with the horses, going to school part-time, working in a nonprofit. And that kind of parallel track lasted for a long time.
Mm, mm.
So
And epiphanies, things that
epiphanies, so
shifted
many
inside
epiphanies.
of you because of your relationship with horses.
Oh yeah. So when I was about 17, I left home and sort of ran away. That's a whole different story.
Oh, well,
And went to
I
my
ran away from home when I was 17 too. I think it's kind of a
perfect.
rite
It's
of
a good
passage.
start. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, you know what they say? Good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. So I feel like to get good judgment, you got to get out there and have a lot of experience.
Make some mistakes. Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. So epiphanies. All right. So then, and as I was preparing to leave, of course, I told my trainer. Like, I didn't tell my mom, but I absolutely prepared my trainer. I said, I'm going to be leaving. I don't know how long I'll be away. She said, look, you can always come back. You always have a home here working with me, and you have professional talent. So really think about that as you go forward in your life.
Mm.
And that was very powerful because I really respected her judgment. And then I went to Kentucky where my high school friend was living, and I was talking to her about it. And I said that, my trainer had said this. And she, she said, oh, well, I mean, you're a really good rider, but you're too hard on yourself to be a good trainer. Like, you're just too too intense. And it took me a while to understand that.
Oh,
But I was hard on myself, and then I would be too intense high standards for the horses. It's like, we're
right.
all going to work very hard and get it perfect this time. which is a really common mistake. I see parents make it with their kids. I see so many of us make that mistake with ourselves. So that epiphany of going from achievement and high standards, living up to perfection, to really feeling and getting back to how it was with my first horse, where we're in balance, we're having a conversation, we both really enjoy what we're doing, and tying that into how do you do that in a like a high achievement field. Like if you want to be a show jumper, like you do need to jump over the fences. But does your horse like jumping over the fence? How can you encourage your horse to like training? And so that was a wonderful journey that eventually over time, like I could help as a rider, I could help the horses move in a more athletic way than they really would on their own necessarily. So then they learned that if they listened to me and did what I asked, they would feel better in their body and we would have more fun, rather than if the old kind of standard training of children, dogs, people in our lives of thinking, you need to do what I want you to do, otherwise I'm going to be mad. Like there was no threat. And that's pretty great, and that guides a lot of my life now.
Thank you for sharing that. And it just seems like this partnership, I really hear you talking about partnership with the horses as opposed to power over. And that is what I teach the couples that I work with too. I'm teaching partnership model as opposed to competition for power, because oftentimes what I'm seeing with my couples is there's power struggles.
Absolutely.
And most of that is fear of losing control, fear of being dominated. And so you get in there and dominate first. This might be a little out on the limb here, but I'm a sexologist, so I have to ask this, because my feeling would be that if a man learned to respond to the horse intuitively and could really work with the horse's energy, that he might actually be a more sensitive lover. Have you ever counseled anybody on that, or kind of maybe had somebody say to you, I noticed that I'm getting along better with my wife or my girlfriend since I started working with you around horses?
Well, that's you hit the nail right on the head.
Well, I want to hear about that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's such a great opportunity, because in our daily life, we don't necessarily get, I mean, just to start with the physical, we don't necessarily get a lot of opportunity to judge the reactions of others that are without like being in an awkward situation, right? I mean, you can't just go up and start like petting someone's face to see if they like it.
Let's not now.
No, so one of the things I noticed,
damn it.
And so when people work with horses, there is this wonderful experience of being able to start to read the signs of what the horse enjoys. So before you ride the horse or work with the horse, you groom them, right? Because you brush them to get the dirt off, and it's good for the circulation, and the horses enjoy it, just like a massage for us. And so when people start working with the horses, they're often a little tentative, or they're too kind of forceful and the horse doesn't like it or something, but it is that communication. So men can kind of find where the horse likes to be scratched, right? Because they might have itchy spots, just like, like I might like my back scratched, the dogs like their ears scratched. And so having that physical kinesthetic conversation where men can start to have more practice reading physical enjoyment. It's not sexual, but it's like, oh yeah, that feels great when you rub my neck. It's the same body language in humans as with horses.
So, and that would help them to have more of an embodied touch, because one of the things that I work with is the idea of touching, because I'm trying to create a particular effect versus touching so that I feel connected to you and your enjoyment as well as my own. That's very different.
That's huge. That's huge. Yeah, because I mean, horses don't like it, women don't like it, and horses don't like it. If you go up and you like poke them or do something to them physically, like a button, like I'm doing this, so you respond, so I feel good about myself. Nobody likes it. That's not good for anybody, right?
No, no.
And it takes practice. Yeah.
Well, it does.
Read.
You have to relax and breathe into this and really connect.
Yeah, and have it be okay if it's maybe you don't, like your touch doesn't maybe get the response that you wanted, then being confident that you can try another way and it's all right. But also when the person doing the touching has a lot of pressure on themselves, then it just amplifies the whole situation, right? And that's one of the great things about working with horses, because it takes the pressure off.
I think this is one of the gifts that you are able to bring me, men, Joan, because your journey was in finding that you had, were kind of hard on yourself and were expecting yourself to be exacting. And so then you brought that to the horses until you learned to stop doing that. And I think that male role training is oftentimes very hard on men, so that they're supposed to measure up to a particular standard. And then that can translate into their relationships with women, so that they're performance oriented, and it's artifice. It's not actual authentic connection when you're performing. And it just sounds like that you're able to kind of understand where some of the pitfalls are for them.
Yeah, because I was definitely raised to be somewhat macho and to have that kind of performance perfection, feelings and needs are pathetic. You need to do better and be better. And a lot of that was not explicit from my family. My family's great. My mom's family, and like my mom and her family, are sort of macho achievers. My dad's family are high achievers. My dad is more heart-centered and my mom is more sort of hard-nosed intellectual in a way. Right. So it kind of splits opposite the normal or the standard gender patterns, but still, like, it was a really good grounding in growing up in that competitive male brain, right?
Yes.
And then unlearning it. Yeah.
Well, I've had to make similar journeys myself. In our home, my father said, we don't cry here.
Totally.
So even when somebody near to us died, we weren't supposed to cry. And it was hard for me to get reconnected to those emotions. And I also share a real bond with men, because I identify with male role training. Even though I was born with a female body, my dad was still kind of insisting that I grow up with this masculine attitude towards life, which is very outcome oriented. Just the facts, ma'am. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but at the same time, growing up female, there's other things that accrue to that. Like, for instance, one of the things that I teach men is to envision that a lot of women, maybe most of us, I don't know, are kind of prey animals. And so I'm thinking about ungulates like deer and like horses, and how sometimes directly coming at them can feel very intimidating. And I'm wanting to develop a sensitivity around what a prey animal, how they think and feel. And as a woman, I could just speak for myself, feeling like you're almost always being hunted. That's kind of then your mindset is trying to figure out, is this a safe situation or not? And that's an overlay that some men deal with, but I think the vast majority don't. They're not always thinking about how they might get raped today. Or does that woman have ill intentions? That woman who's flirting with me, is she going to do me harm? But for a lot of women, that's the first filter that has to kind of, everything has to pass through before there's any kind of a trust extended. What do you think about that, Joan?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And that's one of the really great things about working with horses is, as humans, like you said, we're omnivores. So we're both prey and predator, right? And so women often societally, due to this whole experiment in patriarchy, do feel that prey feeling. And horses are exquisitely attuned to our congruence. Like, are our thoughts and feelings and actions all the same, or are we pretending to be something we're not? Just like you found with the Clydesdale that you know, the horse you know, where he'll respond to you when you're feeling completely aligned. But if you're trying to like bribe him with a carrot and yell at somebody on the phone, he doesn't want to play there. So
No, he doesn't. He definitely doesn't want anything to do with me if I'm in that space.
no,
Yeah.
because it's, you know, millions and millions and millions of years of evolution in the horse family, where if you think of the nature programs we watched about the African savanna, there's the watering hole and there are the zebras at the watering hole. And sometimes the zebras and the lions are at the same watering hole drinking at the same time, but nobody's getting eaten.
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
So all of the ungulates, and especially the equines, really had to evolve to know whether a lion is truly not hungry and not going to attack them, or if the lion is pretending to be not hungry so they can get close enough to attack.
Oh my
which
God.
explains so many dating experiences I've had, right? And it's just, we all kind of know that feeling of, oh,
Right.
this person is not what they seem. They want something that I don't necessarily want at the same time.
Yes, yes, and they're
And
pretending.
they're not being clear about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. A lot of the men that I work with, I'll say, well, I did this and I said that. And I go, but how are you feeling? And they're like, what's that have to do with anything?
I don't know.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
and it's hard. Like, it takes practice. And it, like, sometimes you're going to feel stuff that you don't like, and you don't like what it says about you that you feel these things. You know? And
Jamie has totally hurt my feelings. He's pissed me off. I wouldn't talk to him for a month because I was so upset by the feedback he was giving me. And then I realized that was kind of silly. And I'm a curious person. I want to learn and I want to grow. So I was like, what is this guy trying to tell me? What is this guy trying to tell me? And I've really enjoyed learning about that congruency that you're talking about.
yeah.
Because, you know, there's a way in which we kind of lie to ourselves about what's going on inside of ourselves. Oh, I'm fine. Oh, that didn't bother me. And it's not true.
No,
Yeah.
not true.
Well,
And there needs to be a space like you created where it's okay. You know?
It's okay. That's what the shame free.
Everything is okay.
You know
Yeah.
what? If you haven't started doing this, I think, because it's really popular, men will pay a lot of money to learn how to do better with women.
Yeah.
I think that should be.
It's so powerful.
I think that should be part of your marketing. It should be improve your romance, improve your dating skills. Come talk to my horses.
Yeah. Make the mistakes here, not out on your dates.
Yeah, exactly. Well, look, I have really enjoyed talking to you about this. This is fun.
Yeah, this is so great. Thanks for inviting me. Yeah, it's been lovely to chat.
Yeah, totally. Is there anything that you want my viewers to know before you go? And then also after that, how can they reach out to you if they want to
Sure.
talk to your horses?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is really giving yourself a break. You know, that like whatever happens inside of you, you're not actually responsible for the thoughts you have and the feelings you have. They just come up out of our millions and millions and millions of years of evolution and growth and development and all the different parts of our brain and psyche. But you're only responsible for what you do with them, you know?
Oh.
And so you might think things and you might feel things, and be that sort of caring container for yourself.
Yeah.
Where it's okay to feel what you feel and think what you think. And if you're not comfortable with it, it's okay to work on changing it, but you can't change it if you don't see it. You know, and it
So
just puts too much pressure on.
Yeah, self-acceptance.
Self-acceptance.
And self-compassion, I'm hearing.
Yeah.
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 Well, you are a great model for that. How can people reach you? How can the men reach you if they want to improve
So
their dating life?
to get ready for 2021 when people are going to start dating and upgrading relationship skills here. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. So I have a website. It's joankbrennan.com. There's a contact me page. You can, give me a call or shoot me an email. I'm happy to chat about any of this stuff or answer questions.
Yeah. Oh, and what's the name of the horse you're kissing in that picture?
Which picture?
There's
Oh,
a pic-
yes.
there's a picture on your website of you and a horse kissing.
Yes. That's Annie. She was a young horse that I was helping to start for a friend. And in the
Oh,
beginning of training, she wasn't sure if she liked me because it was a little bit like not totally being on vacation.
right.
And then pretty soon she thought, oh, there's my trainer. This is fun.
Oh, wow.
Really
Well,
sweet. Yeah.
you obviously have a great way with horses and with men. So
It's pretty great. It's fun.
yeah. I really appreciate your work in the world, and I appreciate you sharing it with us here in the Shame Free Zone. Thank you, Joan.
Thank you. Likewise.